Chain Reaction, where supply chain news meets real-world impact. No nonsense, no wasted time. We decode the headlines, break down the trends shaping supply chains, and deliver the intel you need to move forward with confidence. Here's what you need to know.
Hi, Priya. It's nice to get a chance to speak with you. For those of you who haven't met Priya before, she leads Bristlecone's organizational change management practice, and that's where I'd actually like to start today. Priya, can you just define for the non-practitioners out there what OCM is?
Yes, thank you so much, Jen. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this call. So yes, I mean, for me, I think organization change, it's a dynamic process. Like it's constituted with relationship. There are immense context of uncertainties. I mean, there will be a lot of, mapping of relationship in terms of understanding. There are information flows and the assessment of transformation success, right? So which means that there is so much rapid change that is happening in the organization, but are we enough keeping our employees or users up to that speed of updating themselves with skills, updating themselves with that pace at which the organization wants to change, right? And OCM, or organization change management, really takes that ownership to ensure that we are keeping users intact with that journey that is organization has defined for themselves, or the agenda that they have planned for themselves, and how we are bringing readiness for them, right? And that's why, to ensure that there's overall success that the organization sees.
Great. So it would strike me, if we're responsible for helping the organization understand these changes and drive the adoption of those changes, that you really have to have a good handle on the organization itself. So how could you explain how it is that how it is we've typically understood those organizations, and maybe some of the changes that we're starting to drive with the advent of AI? So first, traditionally, how have we done it? And then how are we starting to be able to look at it with AI?
Absolutely. I think I just want to answer that with the code, right? I mean, typically all this while, the approach was to predict and plan, right? And with now this data-driven approach that is coming up with AI, the expectation and the new approach that we as an organization now has is sense and respond. So how do I sense that what's on ground happening with the users there? And then how do I ensure that I'm able to navigate through that, make my plan robust enough, or mitigate that plan real time, right? So I think that's the change that I'm seeing, which is, really worked very well in our current set of organizations.
So let me try to translate that, right? In the past, the way we would typically think about getting to know an organization, you kind of start with the org chart, right? That way you understand who reports to whom and how the flow of information goes up and down the literal chain. With AI, do you see more flexibility? Are you able to identify different types of information flow that might be happening more organically outside of the structured org chart defined flows of information?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up, right? I mean, that used to always be our start point, right? Look at the organization, identify who are the SMEs, identify who are our change agents, and see that, okay, these are going to be our key stakeholders now throughout the project, right? I mean, that used to be the start point. Now, today, the supply chain organizations are, empowering teams to harness that potential with AI, big data, analytics to improve day by day and, take more informed decisions, which means as change manager, I'm also, ensuring that, we are looking at that kind of a scale and, make that change a little differently, right? So, which means that maybe that org chart or identifying the SMEs, maybe not the right way to look at it, or there are maybe more underlying, stakeholders who may be not so evident on the structure, but they are definitely can be the change agents in the process, right? So yes, that's definitely evolving.
So a change leader doesn't necessarily mean that they own a box on the org chart, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So what does make a good change leader in an organization? So they may or may not have a box on the org chart. What do you look for when you're identifying change leaders? What makes a good driver of change in our client organizations?
Right. I think a lot of time what also prevails in the organizations is the informal groups or informal communities, right? And what I look for as we progress in any project, right? I mean, how are they manifesting those whole social capital in organization, right? I mean, what it really means. It all gets developed through friendship or trust or closeness, or maybe interacting with people outside their everyday transactional role that they are supposed to communicate with each other, right? So there are these informal relationship that also gets created as they work along, and identifying that network itself becomes, I think, it's a change manager's role. I mean, to really identify where it is in which pocket in the region or functions, and how do we then identify those as influencers or change agents. So, I mean, I'm just taking one example, right? I mean, if, in our project, when we have our change agents identified, the expectation is that, they should go back to their functions, their teams, and ensure that they are amplifying the whole change program. But that may or may not happen, right? This is a very role defined for them. But there are change agents which are, not really tagged as that, but they are actually playing that role of influencing and amplifying that whole program for ourselves, and which means they are engaging people in a different way. They are ensuring that there is high involvement and acceptance of the change through their network, right? And that's the identification one needs to do.
So let's say I'm at a client organization and I've recently been tapped to be a change agent. What would that mean for me? And what could I expect to be doing as a change agent in a transformation program?
Yeah, so I think, as a change agent, I think expected that you're a partner with us in that role, which means right from the beginning, when we kick off the project and there is, design sign off, and then there is trainings and testing that is being involved throughout that phases of project, the change agent is getting involved, which means ensuring that their teams, where they expand their nodes, right? I mean, they are actually ensuring that the users or their team members are getting along in that journey, right? I mean, the ideal focus of a change manager is to ensure that, one, the team is aware about the change, they have high acceptance of the change, they are able to comprehend and develop that knowledge of new technology, new functionalities, or new process that is getting defined, and they obviously finally adopt it, right? I mean, that's the whole aim, so that post go live they are really owning that change, right? I mean, we don't see a scenario where they're going back, and just few change manager cannot play that role, right? I mean, we need these change agents who are placed in some pockets which could be functional specific, regional specific, and that's why they become partner with us to ensure that everybody's part in that journey, right? They are attending sessions, they are participating enough, they are involved enough, so that the whole to be that gets defined, the design, the build that gets defined is in line with everybody's expectation, right? I mean, with whatever the scope of work is, it doesn't get defined by only few people. Otherwise, we don't have that acceptance or adoption as we go along, right? And that's the role a change agent is expected to play, right? I mean, they highly influence their team to bring that change together.
Yeah, so it's about understanding the change. It's about being able to communicate the change. It's about being able to represent the organization, and really help be an advocate for that change in the organization, if I understand.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I don't have to have a big senior role on the org chart in order to play that change leader role.
Absolutely no. Yeah, I think that's a myth, because a lot of times the way organization operators, they feel that, okay, it's going to be more cascading top down, which is not really the scenario, right? I mean, the whole peer-to-peer learning works wonders. The even bottom up works wonders, because then that's how the team is really identifying those role models, or they are really trying to understand what is the best practice which is building, and how they want to follow that, right? So it may or may not be a leader, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, so more about trust and collaboration and influence, right? It
Yes.
sounds a lot like social media, right?
Yes.
Do you see a lot of the same tools and techniques in social media being applied across these corporate social networks?
Yes. So I think to use a social network theory, or that, using that tool effectively, I mean, it's important to define that network, right? I mean, going away from that formal structure of hierarchy, but really define that, how that mix of qualitative quant data is looking like, to ensure that, there is some visualization technique coming in. How are we building it more accessible, not overgeneralizing it. So this is, way in which how, one can identify in terms of those. But yes, I think it's, I would say that, it's picking up. I mean, organizations are now trying to understand that, how they can leverage on this network as well, to ensure that they are able to accelerate adoption with working with this group.
So last question, I wanted to ask you to put your forecasting hat on. Given all the changes that have happened in the way that we drive change management from pre-social media and social networking days to today, what do you think happens in the next 5 years? What are the types of changes that AI in particular can enable for organizations that are taking on big change programs?
Yeah. Yeah, I think 5 years is a long, really journey with the pace at which we are seeing things change now. But yes, I mean, this whole supply chain landscape itself is undergoing rapid transformation, right? And I'm sure you'll agree that with this whole technological advancement and evolving leadership paradigms, there is a lot of enhancement in human-machine interactions, right, with Industry 5.0, and with improving resilience and efficiency. So, despite a lot of valiant efforts and techniques that one would, as change manager, bring in with project management or stakeholder engagement, I think the most organizations struggle to beat is the 70% failure rule for profound and people disruptive business change, right? So the way I'm seeing this is, if how this whole space will get evolved, how this will become more people centric, because the team the organization has to define an agenda which is going to be also not disrupt the whole system, but at the same time ensure that there is some streamlining that happens with the pace that the users get developed in their own learning journey, right? I think that's where bringing these two pieces together is going to be very critical as a leader to look at, right? And envisioning that is going to be, I think, what I see as as a focus, like you said, for a leader to drive that.
I love that, leveraging technology to actually enable us to be more human-centric in our communication and collaboration with each other. That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insight with us today on change management and this evolution of our change networks.
Thank you so much, Jen. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for this time. Yeah.